Well. Let's have a look, see what is going on, because I don't know where anything is at the moment. And I'm going to just get everything set up, and there we go. So let's have a look. See, I am looking at starting to record at about 7 a.m. and I'm here on time, which is nice. But yes, so this is going to be a behind-the-scenes recording of chapter 18 of Faust Among Equals, and yes, it'll be interesting. There'll be lots of bloopers and flaggle and getting things wrong, but eyo. It is just one of those things. We just carry on. We just crack on and carry on. But let me have a little look-see and make sure everything is going right. There we go. It seems like everything's going okay. We like this. We like this. Goodness gracious. Sorry about that terrible opening. It's like when you just kind of like, you're looking at everything going, is the sound going out there? Can everything be heard? Does everything look all right? And you're frantically looking on your phone as you're trying to just have a little double check and going, oh yeah, that's fine. That's all right. That looks okay. Yeah, okay, we got this. Yeah, okay, got this. Right then. So, 7 o'clock in the morning. Here we go. I must remember to press record on the actual recording software, because otherwise it'll all go wrong. And I'll do all this work for nothing. And considering it's a really big chapter, that's not really what I want to happen. Right, time to get comfy. We've got this thing. Okie dokie. So not shiny and professional like all the rest of the podcasts, but it is all about recording a chapter. Yo! Ta-da! Hello, Petal. Yeah, there you go. That's my greeting. See, already I've forgotten to press record. Goodness. Right. Grown up time. Yo! Hello, Petal. How you doing? And there you go. I'm already recording on the wrong microphone. That's not a good thing, is it? Hey, things are going a bit strange this morning. What can I do? Oh, goodness. Morning! Really up early, dear Gretel. Well, not up early. How to put this? Usually, I'm up throughout the night, but I don't normally record this early, unless it's winter. So it's getting to about that time. It's a nice, cool and rainy day outside, so it's cooler in my studio. And yes, Jeannie! Oh my goodness! Good morning. So yes, yes, you take me for a loop there. I'm like, oh my god, there's lovely people here. Yes, I'm having a bit of a problem with my recording software at the moment for some reason. There we go. It wasn't looking at the microphone I wanted to use, and then it'll all sound wrong, and it'll sound all echoing. It'll go, yes. But how are you both? How are you both doing? Are you all right? How are things? Having a little look at the chat. This is the weird thing about kind of like just doing it on audio. Kind of, you worry about the dead sound. You're like, oh my goodness. Oh, it's so good to see you both. It really is. But yeah. Oh, thank you, Jeannie. Yeah, it's there's been a lot going on over the past few months. Especially this year. My goodness, this year's been interesting. Yes. Oh my goodness. I hope Doggo is okay. I'm gonna wait and see if everything's okay before I do any recording. Yay, Rose! Hi. So what I will ask you guys is, obviously, when I'm recording, I can't really keep an eye very well on the chat. So look after each other and chat with each other, and hopefully we'll have a good time with this one. Of course, we'll always have a good time with it. Yeah, Jeannie, are you okay? It has been very strange, but oh my goodness, what a night last night. I love Kamala Harris. I think she's amazing and very inspirational. It was I didn't get to see her speech last night, but I was watching it just as I was getting ready this morning before I was going to start recording. But yeah, she's an absolute legend. But yes, very, very strange year. But we've got this thing. We've got this thing. So what we're going to do then is we're going to do chapter 18 of Faust Unequals. But I'm going to kind of record it as if I was recording the chapter normally. And hopefully I'll be able to zip through. But it's quite a long one, so I might have to stop halfway. Hopefully not, but we shall see what we shall see. Yes, and of course my voice is a bit croaky, but we've got this. Yes, Jeannie, absolutely. Absolutely. I agree with you on that one. Brilliant. I love this. Okay, so bear with me while I get my bits and pieces together. And we'll get this show on the road. Hello, Petal. And welcome to the next. Like, you see, that's the thing. I've already started sounding like an absolute mongoloid. I don't use that word. That's the wrong word to use. That's not a right word, is it? Do we use that word anymore? I don't think we do. That's a bad word. I'm really sorry. Oh my goodness gracious. I need to get my act together and get things sorted out. So we're going to delete this. So you'll get the narrative as we go through of me like doing all the bits and bobs and how I'm repairing things as I go along, because that's probably the best way about it. So if there's any dead noise, please excuse me, because that's just, you know. Yes, all is okay here too. Thank you, Jeannie. Appreciate you. Yes, that was a good one. But she is incredibly inspirational. I absolutely adore her. I knew this would happen. I knew this, and I knew she would be the one that was running. But it's fantastic. She's a very, very inspirational role model, and you know, I just think she's incredible. She really is incredible. But yes, I hope everybody's okay. And what we're gonna do is I'm gonna try and get my act together. Grab a little bit of tea first. If you hear any like tea noises, I'm really sorry. Oh, I've got the tea of the day is Yorkshire tea, 1 cup. We've got Twinings tea, which is a buttermint little tea with a nice little splidge of honey. And I've also got my big bottle of water, because these are the essentials when recording stuff. Yes. Right then. Oh, we're ready. Yes. I've been whiffling on this morning. I think I'm still half asleep, but we'll try this thing. We'll see if it works. Okay, my lovely beans, let's do this thing. Hello, Petal. How you doing? How are things going? How's life? As ever, if you can leave a message in the comments and let me know how you are, that would be awesome. And if you can hit the share button, the subscribe or notification bell or anything like that, that would be really much appreciated, because we have to keep the hamsters happy. You know, a lot of channels have a slogan and you know, things that they're known for, and I think that mine is now becoming more known for keeping hamsters happy than anything else. So we're going to crack on with it quickly today, and we've got a long chapter to do, and as we have been cracking along, it's chapter 18 of Faust Among Equals by our wonderful and revered Mr. Thomas of Holt, who we love because he's amazing and he's really talented. And yes, there's still so many more books to explore. And I will be doing Charlie and the Chocolate Factory soon, as well as The Great Glass Elevator. I've bought the books and everything. You know, I've I had the originals, but in the Great Book Purge of 2006, when I moved 300 miles on my own, the about 85% of my physical book collection was donated to other areas, and yes, so then that was one of them. But it's always good to pass books on, as far as I'm concerned. Anyway, enough musings. We shall do this thing. Chapter 18. If there is more joy in heaven over one sinner that repents, it's a wet Sunday afternoon in mid-Wales compared with the ecstatic jubilation in hell over one escaped sinner that gets his collar felt. Not surprisingly, the denizens of the Inferno know how to party. Within 20 minutes of the news breaking, the management had declared a half-day's holiday, and 5,000 years' worth of tormented souls had formed a whirling, tail-lashing conga that roared and billowed through the various rings like a rattlesnake on amphetamines. Objectively speaking, what with the noise and the smoke and the crush of bodies, the epicenter of the party was quite markedly worse than the torments from which the revellers had temporarily been released. However, there's absolutely no limit to what the human spirit can endure when it sincerely believes it's enjoying itself. Meanwhile, in the large conference room, the board were taking counsel as to the reception to be accounted. I don't know what I did there. That went quite off. So we'll try that one again. So this is the thing when you're listening to a live recording, is that I will have to stop and readjust myself and try and get. Oh my goodness, I don't know what even happened there. That went in a bit Pete tongue. Hey, let's have a look. You see, basically, so then what I do when I really make a fluff up like that, I have to go back and just delete the last part, and then we can start again. This is what I have to go through. Oh my goodness. Right. Whew. Meanwhile, in the large conference room, the board were taking counsel as to the reception to be accorded to the returning guest. It's got to have manure in it somewhere, insisted the production director. I may be old-fashioned and set in my ways, but the personnel director shook her head emphatically. With respect, Mr. Chairman, she said, no offence, but my colleague is talking through his arse. You, the finance director, frowned and lifted his index finger slightly to indicate that he required silence. Hold on, he said, looking dispassionately at the production director's rather bizarre anatomy. Point taken, Dennis. And excuse me if I seem pedantic. Flipping flippity dooby-dars. I keep forgetting I changed Dennis to Denise because it was more, varied. Goodness gracious. Hold on a minute. The thing is as well, with doing so many voices at once, it's easier to change over the characters slightly. And that's what I did here. And I've got to remember that Dennis is actually Denise now. I'm so sorry. Right. Let's just double check this. Right. Anatomy. There we go. So we'll try that again. And also remembering the voices. My goodness gracious. I should make notes on this one. Point taken, Denise. And excuse me if I seem pedantic, but Harry always talks through his arse. It's the way he's made, you see. What with his head being in his tummy and all back to front. My colleague, said the personnel director frostily, is, if you prefer, talking nonsense. Damn it, this isn't the time for poncing a bite. We're looking at brimstone here, because... Excuse me, interrupted the production director. I see her still. But perhaps my friend from personnel would be kind enough to let me know where I'm supposed to get brimstone from, since she's so bloody keen on the stuff. In fact, he added spitefully, perhaps she'd just tell us briefly and in her own words exactly what brimstone is, because I've been in this business 3,000 years, imp and fiend, and the amount of your actual brimstone that I've seen around here, you could fit into a very small egg cup. All right, Harry. Thank you. And still have room for the egg. Quiet! The finance director raised his hand. Thank you both very much for your views, which I've noted, but I think I can offer you all an alternative suggestion, which does have quite a lot going for it. The directors turned and looked at him. He smiled. Just To recap for a moment, he said, leaning back slightly in his chair. So far, we've had a bed of red hot coals from Jerry and Colin's 40-foot earthworm and Steve's very innovative game for love concept. Far be it from me, by the way, Steve, but in my opinion, there's such a thing as over the top, even for us. And of course, Terry's Mobius loop of Dame Kiri Takanawa Singh's country, which we're definitely going to have to use somewhere, but not here, I think. Plus, of course, Harry's Shitwell and Dennis's Brim's flipping Ferrugies. Ah! I did it again. And all this time I wanted to keep sneezies. Yeah, this is the thing. Oh, thank you, Jeannie. Appreciate you. Jeannie, it's true. Good morning. Good morning, good morning, good morning. Amateur Hamster Radio Hour, something like that. It's just a live read, Jeannie. A live behind the scenes of recording. Oh goodness, that was a real fluff up. Hold on. Oh goodness. Yes, keeping the voices straight is I normally have a list of the voices and a reference. And the trick I have is to have in my mind an image of somebody famous that they remind me of. Or I'll do a sort of like a accent, medium, high and low, depending. So for the main characters, it's normally for somebody famous, and for the background characters, it's normally kind of like an accent and a medium, high, low, you know, it basically makes it easier, especially when you've got big casts of secondary characters. But oh, my nose is itching. Oh my goodness. Oh, we've got to work this one out. Right, let's try this again. I'm sorry if this is a bit disruptive, but the whole chapter will be back on the channel. But this is just part of the podcast, and I'll put the proper chapter up later on when I've done the production sort of thing. There we go. So what I'm doing is, you won't be able to hear that particular part, but it's just where I re-listen to make sure that I'm actually deleting the right area. I've not deleted the right area on multiple occasions, and that causes a lot of extra work, which nobody likes. Right. And I've got to find where I was actually recording from. There we go. Of course, Harry's Shitwell and Denise's Brimstone. There we go. We've got this. We know where we're at. Okay. Of course, Harry's Shitwell and Denise's Brimstone. He paused and flicked through his microchipped organizer. Freaking hell. See, I've lost the gist now. This happens on a regular. I will let you know that. That's ease. Ah, goodness. Strange grumblings with this microphone. Let's get back to it. He paused and took a sip of water and then went on. It's all good stuff. But where's the money coming from? Just think about that for a moment, would you? Because once we've paid Lundqvist's invoice and settled the compensation claims for all those practical jokes George pulled while still nominally in our charge and therefore our responsibility, there'll probably still be enough left in the entertainment's budget for a cup of tea and a ginger nut. Narrators know if you haven't had a UK ginger nut biscuit, you're missing out on life, because they are probably the best things since the invention of biscuits, in my opinion. It's kind of like rusks for adults. That you just like kind of nom on them and gnar gnar. Yeah, the best thing in the world. Anyway, back to the story, but nothing else. Right? Anybody got any thoughts on that one? There was silence, except for the soft fizzing of the varnish on the boardroom table where the sales director had breathed on it. The finance director nodded. Okay, he said. Here's a suggestion. I took the liberty, he went on, standing up and walking to the back of the room, of bringing along a few slides to illustrate what I've got in mind. The lights, please, someone. The lights went out, and a few seconds later, the back wall was covered with an eye-catching, rather familiar image. The finance director pointed to it with his right index claw. You should all know what this is by now, he said. It's the right-hand panel of the Garden of Earthly Delights, courtesy of our very own artist in residence, Ron Bosch. Now, as you're all well aware, Ron's using this as a central tableau for the main shopping and recreation area of the theme park. Can I have the next slide, please? A machine clunked softly in the background, and the image on the screen zoomed in to show a close-up of the justly celebrated centrepiece of the panel, the bird-headed demon with a cauldron on the back of its head and its feet in two water jugs, perched in a high chair cum hourglass arrangement, daintily chewing on a human torso and legs. If hell had a mascot, this was it. The Guinness toucan, the Esso tiger, the Andrex puppy, and Captain Beaky. The finance director grinned. Get the picture, he said. There was a bemused silence. Frankly, said the production director at last, but no, not really. I expect I'm being really thick here, but what's Captain Beaky got to do with getting even with Lucky George? Plenty, if you agree with my proposal, the finance director replied. He motioned for the next slide. Here, he continued, we've got the design specs for the fiberglass model of Beaky. We're all set to order for the park. He tapped the bottom left-hand corner of the screen with his pointer. Note particularly, he said, the price. Now, please don't think I'm advocating corner cutting because I'm not. But that really is a lot of bread. Too bloody right, commented the production director sourly. I've said it before. These boys from the pattern makers are ripping us off, and we're doing bugger all about it. The finance director smiled. Maybe, he said, but in this instance, I don't think the pricings are excessive. Because the whole point about the Beaky model is that it actually works. Moving parts, all singing, all dancing. What you do is you put a coin in here. He indicated the hindquarters of a soul in torment, just below the high chair, and immediately Beaky eats the sinner with realistic noise and odor effects and piped screams. Bushy reckons it's going to be a real money spinner once it's up and running. But in the meantime, there's the capital costs to find. Bad news, people. Bad news. On present costings, it's going to be a tight squeeze. There was a rustle and a ripple around the boardroom table, which the finance director noticed. He nodded his approval. I can see you are all way ahead of me, he said. I think that with a little ingenuity, we've got the whole damn flock with one small pebble. Just to make sure we're all on the same wavelength, however, I'll quickly run it past you, and we will see what happens. Instead of a fiberglass disposable sinner, $750 each, according to the quotes, and we estimate he'll get through 10 or 12 in a day. If we could substitute a flesh and blood, perpetually reusable organic sinner, not only would we save on parts, but the whole sideshow's going to be one hell of a lot more authentic and appealing to the punters. Oh my goodness gracious me. Sorry, it's really difficult to keep that one going. Oh my goodness. Excuse me. Oh, this is the price of the actual voice things. I'm really sorry if you're getting into this. As I said, behind the scenes, you will be treated to an equable of bloopers and me kind of like lamenting about how awful I can be at this sometimes. Oh goodness. Do I taste the cracks on the door? Oh my goodness, right. Oh, I have to reboot that one a little bit because I need some tea. I'll go back to not only can we save on parts, I think that'd be a good place to go to. Oh, goodness gracious. How's it sounding? Is it sounding okay? Doodle-doo-doo-doo, apart from my fluff ups. But we know this is what's going to happen. Right. But the whole sideshow, okay. Here we go. Sorry about this. Ah, my goodness. My goodness. My goodness. There we go. Try that again. But the whole sideshow is going to be one hell of a lot more authentic and appealing to the punters. What do you reckon? After a short interval, the comments started to flow. Diabolic humour is, to a large degree, shaped by its environment. Hence the production director's comment that it was the sort of thing he'd like to chew over for a while. The personnel manager's remark that it was the sort of design that you could really get your teeth into. The company secretary's observation that Harry had taken the words right out of his mouth, and the senior redcoat's warning that they shouldn't bite off more than they could chew. When the finance director had had about as much of this sort of thing as he could stand, he raised a finger for silence. Agreed, then, he said cheerfully. I'll tell Lundqvist to deliver on site first thing in the morning. Thank you all. Yes, that was that part. Now we've got to get ready for the next part. Woo! Goodness gracious. Please excuse me for being Coronavirus. That is awesome. Thank you all. I do appreciate you. Appreciate you. That's from one of the other books that I was actually doing. Right. Okay. I can't even remember who. Right. Okay. The only thing I don't find with reading through Kindle is sometimes it's not set up right for different sections. Subsections within a chapter. So then you kind of like, you're waffling along and you're, oh my crikey, I've just changed over scenes and characters. Which is what we're going to do now. So, yeah. You planned the whole thing, didn't you? Lundqvist nodded. And you fell for it. Well, yes. Lucky George tried to nod, but the huge steel collar clamped around his neck precluded movement of a more than 1,000th of an inch. If it's any satisfaction to you, Smiler. Yes, I did. Oh, flipping blubbity blubs. Arg! I will get my characters. You see, the thing is with Lundqvist and Lucky George, the characters are actually quite similar, but Lundqvist is more la-da-da, and Lucky George is more James Bondish sort of thing. So, yeah, it's getting their dialogue in the right places at the right times. Really should have highlighted this before I started reading, but that's how it goes. Right, okay. Let's let these cronky cronks go. Do you know something? I was using the right flipping voice. Arg! Okay, we'll try that again. If it's any satisfaction to you, Smiler. Yes, I did. Happy now? Don't call me Smiler. Lundqvist growled dangerously. Why not Smiler? George raised an eyebrow. About the only part of him above waist level capable of any motion. It's your nickname, isn't it? I mean, Yes, when we were at school together, you did used to ponce around the yard telling everyone that from now on you were to be known as Captain Death the Terminator. But I thought Nick, Machiavelli, and I had kicked that out of you by the end of the third year. That'll do, George. Sorry, Smiler. Lundqvist pulled savagely on the chain attached to the collar and made no reply. For his part, he blamed his entire collection of terminal personality disorders on the way George and his gang had spent their neutral school days running verbal rings around him and then beating him up, just because he was small and delicate and liked setting fire to people in their sleep. He'd waited a long time to get even, and he wasn't going to be hurried or flustered. Here, Kurt, George called out after a while. Are you sure you know where you're going? Yes. Why? Fine, Kurt, fine. Just so long as you're sure. It's just that there's no deserts in Europe, and this is a desert we're in, and I thought I would just mention on either side of them, sun dunes rolled away into the fold of the horizon and sky. Lundqvist sniggered and turned in his saddle. We're going to the scenic route, George. Nuts. Oh, yike. Right, we'll try it again. I keep thinking I'm going to sneeze, so if at any point I sneeze, I just re-apologise. Bloody hay fever's still going. Right, going to the scenic route, silly girl. We'll try that again. Well, you see, the thing is, I never thought I would use Kindle. Never thought I would. And I am a purist in certain books, to be honest, like the books I collect, for example, like Holt and other books like that. But when it comes to narrating and recording, it's absolutely game changer. Because the thing is, when you use like normal books, obviously you can hear the page turns, especially if you've got a setup like this one, which is very sensitive to pretty much. It's sensitive enough to a gnat farting over in Malaysia, to be honest. This sneezes have accents. I don't know. But mine kind of come out of nowhere and they're like, rah. Okay, let's do this thing. Right, okie dokie. Okay, and I'm pointing to where it is on my, because I use my tablet as well for my Kindle. So I'm currently pointing to where the line is so I can have a sip of my tea. Right, we'll try this again then. So we're going to go the scenic route, George. We're going the scenic route, George, he said. I felt you might like to stretch your legs one last time. That was thoughtful of you, Smiler. Before they're stretched for you, of course, ha! Of course, George grinned. There you go again, Smiler. Pulling my leg as usual. Nice sunny day, isn't it? You like it? Yes. That's just as well, isn't it? You know me, Kurt. Never one to complain. George yawned. Yes, like I was saying, that was good thinking on your part, getting to me through my friends. My Achilles heel, you thought to yourself, or rather my fatal flaw, because I expect you get Achilles heel and Achilles tendon muddled up. Sneaky, of course, and despicable, putting everyone to all that trouble. But there we are. All's fair in love and law enforcement. They made me give it back. George looked at him. Sorry. America, Lundqvist said, with as much bitterness in his voice as there is vermouth in the driest of dry martinis. They made me give it back. Not, he added, as if I really wanted it for anything. In fact, they're welcome to it. That's all right then, George said. Fun's fun. Nobody enjoys a good stunt better than I do. But it'd have spoilt a little bit to think of. I don't think I really quite did it wrong there, but I kind of stumbled over my face and my words. Please excuse the reset button, but I do actually have a rewind button, as Mr. Bear normally says. Yes. Okie dokie. If this gets really annoying, I do apologise. I know where I've gone wrong now. I know the book inside out, back, front, and sideways, but you're still going to fluff up on the dialogue now and again. Right then. There, but it had, you see, it's done it would have. We'll try that again. But it would have spoiled it a little bit to think of the entire USA being carbonized just because of me. I was a little bit worried about that, actually. Though I don't know why. It's not as if it was me that started all this. Lundqvist gave the chain another vicious tug, so that George staggered and nearly ended up on the ground. But he found his feet again and started to whistle. Been missing the old place? George looked up. Well, to be honest with you, no. Still, there are worse places. Lundqvist pulled hard on the reins and stopped his horse. There are? He asked. Sure. George stood on one leg and rubbed his left ankle with his right heel. Millions of them, all over the place. Honestly, Smiler, your mob has about as much idea of how to go about torturing souls as my aunt's cat. Less, he added on reflection, and accurately, it was on my mind for a long time to mention it to somebody because I'm a helpful sort of chap by nature. But then I thought, nah, why bother? Nobody'll thank you for it, so Lundqvist's skin prickled as he sensed a verbal trap, but his curiosity got the better of him. Go on then, he said. George smiled. One of these days, he said, do yourself a favour and get a job in an office somewhere. Any office, any place. The term soul-destroying's a bit of a cliche, but it's damned accurate. 2 years in accounts has the same effect on your average soul as 2 teaspoons of salt on a garden slug. Woof! Lundqvist frowned. You're winding me up, he said. No, I'm not, George replied. You don't know because you've never tried it. Nice outdoor life, travel, killing interesting people. You don't know you're born. And as for all those so-called torments they've got down in the basement there, we're talking summer holidays compared to being stuck on the end of a telephone all day, being shouted at because the green forms at Central don't tally with the pink paying in slips. No, Lundqvist shook his head slowly. You wait and see what we've got in store for you, and then tell me all about it. George mustered an expression of polite interest. Something fun? He asked. Lundqvist told him. EuroBosch, a visitor's guide. Enter through the burning cities at the northern end of the park, buying your ticket from the four-legged, owl-headed egg, who also retails a wide range of souvenir goods, postcards, plenary indulgences, and masses for the dead. Each visitor or party is then assigned a personal fiend to act as an escort and guide for your tour. It's very helpful if visitors can specify any preferences for a particular fiend type well in advance. The spoon-headed monks in particular are in great demand. Are elegant. I got quite into it there. Hold on a minute. Doop-a-doo. I am currently working with a Kindle screen, plus I work with Audacity on my actual. I've got 2 monitors, so currently I've got my Kindle screen, which is actually in really large lettering because I'm blind as a bat. Then I've got the one monitor with my Audacity, so I can follow what I'm recording, what I'm doing, and then I've got this live on another screen on my second monitor. So it's kind of like I make sure that when I do stop for a break, or a fluff up, as it were, I'm like looking at all 3 screens. So yeah, but when I'm reading and stuff, I can sort of, where I've got it set up, I can sort of see in my periphery that it is actually recording, because the amount of times that the amount of times that I was recording something and I was like, and then recording all the way through, and I look up and I've stopped the recording to do an edit or something, And then the last 20 minutes, I've not had the recording thing on. I'm like, look at it, and that's soul destroying. You're like, look at it, like, oh no. But it happens. That's just the way it goes. It's just one of those things. Right. So we got to the spoon-headed monks are in particular are in great demand. And are allocated would be the term. I'm gonna try and do this one now. Whoo! Got to take a run up for this sentence. And are allocated on a first come, first damned basis. As you pass over the bridge, embattled by armies, the first exciting and enjoyable activity you will come to will be the Ferris ears. All you have to do is climb up the scaffolding to the gallows on the left of the ears to get to your seat. You're then churned round and round inside the ears, being narrowly missed by the huge pendant knife blade until you're hurled out, dizzy and terrified, through the slot at the front. Next on the programme is the amazing free-to-enter satanic bagpipe karaoke, situated on a flat circular platform on top of the silver dead. Look closely at the illustration in the brochure, and you'll see a delighted visitor being led to the microphone by a bird-headed fiend with a burning torch. Just down from the karaoke is the popular refreshment area, conveniently situated in the shattered eggshell. The refreshment area offers a wide range of traditional infernal hot and cold dishes, light snacks, and bird-headed fiends. Patrons are requested to refrain from smoking in the refreshment area, although residents may, of course, smoulder unobtrusively. Across the boating lake from the refreshment area is the family favourite Lost Souls Tortured on Musical Instruments game. For a moderate admission charge, you can be crushed in a viol, rolled in a drum, strung on a harp, or crucified on a lute, and the attendant dog, rabbit, and amphibian-headed demons will be pleased to assist you in any way they can. You may then wish to cross back over the boating lake to enjoy the unique sensation of participating in the rollicking night eaten by dog stall, or perhaps you will prefer to spend a quarter of an hour or so simply walking about the grounds, marvelling at the many varied and different species of wild fiend to be found there before embarking on a helter-skelter dash through the horse's skull the salt course, followed by a thrilling 20 minutes with the Manta Ray paintball team. Whichever of the many twistingly enjoyable activities you choose to take part in on your way around EuroBosch, you should on no account miss the high spot of any visit. The all-action, non-stop Captain Biggie extravaganza, guaranteed to haunt your nightmares with feverish intensity for whatever remains of your life. Finally, a few do's and don'ts to make your visit more enjoyable. 1. Please do not feed the fiends except with the specially prepared human souls obtainable from the gift shop situated in the giant lantern. The fiends' diet is carefully regulated for their own health and well-being, and sweets, sandwiches, and gobbets of human flesh can be harmful. 2. Please do not ask to be mangled by the giant bird-headed butterflies. Their wings are extremely fragile, and you risk spoiling your own and other people's enjoyment. 3. Please take your sins home with you, or place them in the receptacles provided. 4. Only children purchased on the premises may be consumed in the refreshment area. And after that, Lundqvist was saying, they stuff you straight back into your skin and around you go again, over and over and over. For the rest of your... Sounds all right to me. Lundqvist lost his temper. No, it doesn't, he shouted. It's horrible, and you'll scream and howl and beg for mercy, but nobody will hear, and it'll be the same every day forever and... except Thursdays. Lundqvist's head snapped round. What do you mean, Thursdays? He spat. The park's shut Thursdays, George said, for cleaning and maintenance. And I don't imagine your bosses will want to pay for the electricity if there's nobody there. Do you? I expect the whole thing will grind to a halt until opening time on Friday. Look! By the same token, George went on implacably, I very much doubt whether the machines will be running every evening after all the visitors have gone, because that's when the little men with the oil cans come round and do all the bearings. Mind you, he added, if it's like any fun fair I've ever been to, at least a third of the time the place is open to the machines. Well, you've been in there. I'll try that one again. Oh my goodness. We shall try this again. At least a third of the do. Do do do. Do do do. Excuse me. At least a third of the time. There we go. At least a third of the time the place is open, the machines will have broken down or overheated or something. So the actual net being chewed time is reduced by what? Something like, all right, Lundqvist thundered. It won't be absolutely incessant. It'll still hurt like buggery when it is working. It would hurt, George replied calmly, if I hadn't learned advanced tantric yoga as a young man at college. Marvelous stuff, you know. Means you can lie on beds of nails and prance about on red-hot coals for hours on end and not feel a thing. You should try it sometime. Lundqvist was pulling handfuls of hair out of his horse's mane by now. Okay, he said, so maybe it's not incessant and maybe it won't hurt as much as it should, but it'll be very, very boring. Or hadn't you considered that? George smiled beatifically. I come from a large family, he replied, and we were forever being visited by some cousin or other, usually middle-aged with photographs. And you presume to talk to me about being bored. Look! Plus, the tantric yoga helps with that too. It's extremely hard to be bored when you're contemplating the vastness of being through the sharp focus of experience while standing aside from your persona. George grinned like a man-trap. It's a bit like twiddling your thumbs, only less exhausting physically. Lundqvist glanced down at his bald horse and got a grip of himself. You'll see, he said, who has the last laugh. I expect you will, said George. Smiler. Oh my goodness gracious. Whenever there's like a loud voice or a shout, because I tend not to try and shout very loudly, but like kind of just project the voice a bit more, it really does make my throat hurt. Please excuse a little break. Buttermint tea is wonderful for a bad throat. So here we go again. And of course, it does take a strain on the voice as well when we go through these. So we shall delete that. And of course, when you get a catch in your voice, that's it. You got to just keep going until that catch goes. It's a nightmare. Still got a bit of COVID. Please excuse. Well, we didn't use that word. I was going to silence it there for a minute, but hold on a second. I need to have one of those back in a second things for muting, because you don't want to hear me coughing. Oh, goodness gracious. Onwards. Are we doing okay? Are we all doing good? Are we all doing fine? Right. Although there was still a full week to go before the scheduled grand opening, the management had reckoned that it would be good business to have a few sneak previews. Potential advertisers, reps from the main holiday companies, and other major clients in the making were therefore cringing and lurking their way around the park when Lundqvist strutted through the main gate, remembering to duck so as to avoid leaving his head behind as he passed under the fish-headed monster that was perched over the lintel. It had been put there as a hat-check fiend, but, old habits die hard. A wave of his .40 Glock was enough to persuade the egg that Lundqvist didn't need a ticket and didn't want any handmade demonic fudge, and after Lundqvist had parked his horse in the horse park, they passed through into the burning city's area. Once or twice, Lundqvist nearly jumped out of his skin as they turned a corner to be confronted by a flute-headed badger or a 9-foot-high cowled lizard. George simply smiled and occasionally nodded in tacit salutation. Scared? Shut up! Lundqvist yanked hard on the chain, and George reeled heavily against a 4-legged, Alsatian-sized wine jar, which staggered, slipped in a pool of its own spillage, and crashed to the ground, shattering into hundreds of razor-edged splinters. There was a howl of fury from a scaffolding tower overhead, followed by a forceful request that the two of them should look where they were bloody well going. Smiler. Now what? If I were you, I'd let me go now. It's amazing the way that life can still find things to take our breath away, even when we think we've seen and heard it all. Are you out of your skull? Lundqvist demanded. I wouldn't let you go now for all the napalm in Iraq. Oh no, we can't use that one. Sorry, I've got to do certain edits. Oh my goodness, what should I can't even think what I think we'll have to change that a little bit. So I've got complete mind blank now. There we go. I wouldn't let you go now for all the everything that's nice and a cake with a cherry on top. You sure? Lundqvist grinned nastily. Absolutely positive. Okay, George said, and shrugged. On your head be it, then. And a few seconds later, it was. It was a truck-sized, expanded polystyrene turbot, dressed in a cardinal's hat and playing a harp, and it hit Lundqvist in the back of the head before landing directly on top of him. All that was visible of him was his hands and one toe. Told you, said George. Furtively, and with a face like thunder, Hieronymus Bosch climbed down from the crane and looked round. Right, he hissed. That's it. That's the very last time I help you out of a jam. Understood? Afternoon, Ron. We are now. Bosch went on, fumbling in his pocket for the diamond-edged hacksaw. Finally and definitively quits. Got that? George nodded. Very good of you to help me out here, Ron, he said. Always could rely on you in a crisis. Well, Bosch snapped back as the severed halves of the first handcuff hit the ground. In future, you can rely on me not being here. Understood? You always were a pal, Ron, said Lucky George, smiling. Well, I mustn't keep you. How are you getting on with those chains and things? Bosch winced sharply as he touched the blade of the hacksaw with the tip of his finger. It was hot, very hot indeed. Bloody things! They've gone and used carbon steel for these damned manacles. Don't they have any idea whatsoever of how much things cost? Never mind. George swung his arms and rolled his neck to suggest that it would be nice to move, if only eventually. Can't expect this lot to know things, Ron. Be seeing you. Once he was clear of the chains and the collar, George made for the giant lantern. He needed food and a drink and quite possibly a new pair of feet. Well, he said to himself as he looked round, if I did want some new feet, this would be the place to come. Hundreds of them, and some with nothing attached at either end. After the drink and the sandwich, of course, there would be the problem of getting out of the park. As priorities go, however, it wasn't exactly upholding pole position. He walked up the back of the oversized carving knife and swung open the door. Excuse me. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Thank you so much. Sorry about the coughing fit there. That's another issue, but we can get past that. It's all good. It's fine. Excuse me. Right. We shall try again. Then he remembered. No money. Damn. He tried to conjure for some, and then he remembered. Magic doesn't work here because of interferers. I'll try and pick that up again. We'll do this thing. Sorry, I've just kind of knocked myself a bit off kilter, but we will get back to it. Whee-yoo. Let's go back a little bit more. We'll go back to he tried to conjure for some because that's kind of like logical, isn't it? I'm sorry for all the breaks. I'm a bit off kilter this morning. Hey! He tried to conjure for some and then remembered. Magic doesn't work here because of interference from the tannoy system. Hi, he said. You got any washing up needs doing? 7 pairs and 3 trios of eyes turned and stared at him. You what? Said a voice from behind the bar. I said, George repeated, sitting on a bar stool. Any washing up you want doing? In return for a cup of coffee? Something like that. The bar fiend cackled through its twisted beak. Listen, chum, it said. This is hell, right? No problem getting washing up done here. Fair enough. George nodded. Plenty of unhelpful husbands, you mean? All right then. You take a check. The fiend scowled and pointed with its wingtip at a notice over the fireplace, which said, no credit, no loitering, service not included. I think I've been here before, George said. Well, sorry to have bothered you. See you around. The door through which he had just walked swung shut. Worse than that, it folded its arms. George sat down again and surreptitiously pulled a ball of peanuts towards him. Before his fingers could close around any of the contents, they jumped out of the bowl and scurried for the ashtray. Where do you come from, anyway? Demanded the fiend. Haven't seen you in here before, have I? I'm with the preview tour, George replied. Actually, I'm a bit lost. Who isn't? Good point. With a deft flick of his wrist, George brushed a slower-than-average peanut into the palm of his hand and swallowed it quickly. Could you direct me to the main gate? The bus leaves in 10 minutes, and... The fiend wrinkled its beak. I know who you are, it said. You're that lucky George character. Well, sunshine, this time you won't be so bleeding lucky because... At the corner of his eye, George caught sight of something nice. Niceness, like beauty, is very much in the beholder's eye, because all he'd seen was 2 more bird-headed monsters, but these ones were different. They were seagull-headed. Here, the bar fiend was saying. You two, are you from security? A seagull head nodded. Took you bloody time, didn't you? Here he is. Now get him out of here. George waited until they were past the night eaten by dogs and out onto the hard ice of the pond before breaking the silence. Like the thing said, he muttered, you two took your bloody time. Larry shrugged. It's not easy, you know, he said. We had to find costumes. And they had people in them too, Mike added. So we had to get rid of them. And then we had to find you. Our people kept stopping us and asking where the laughs are. Hey, we did our best. George nodded. No problem, he said. Just so long as you can find the way out. To be honest with you, I don't like it much here. Don't let Ron know I said that, by the way. It's over there, Larry said, pointing. Up past that big head thing with the plate on top. Better still, there's a fire escape just below the burning cities. We could go through there. George nodded. Where's Helen? He asked. Waiting up front with the car, Mike answered. She insisted on coming. Quite right, too. Now then, I left Lundqvist under a fish, but he's probably on the loose again by now, so, well, we'd better get a move on. As they made their way up the bank away from the pond, A rabbit-headed demon shuffled up and asked them if they wanted to go on the man-eating loot. They shook their heads and walked on. Freeze! Oh, for pity's sake, George muttered, clicking his tongue and dodging a bullet from the .40 Glock. Come on, we better make for that thing over there. Just a minute, boss. You don't want to go in there. It's the... Come on, Larry, and don't dawdle. I see. Barely now. Did the wrong one. I thought it would be him. No, it was George. Hey, I will do as the other one. Yeah. Come on, Larry, and don't dawdle. I see. George whispered. What do you mean? Larry acknowledged the remark with a tiny dip of his head. The rest of him was frozen with terror. Terry? I think it might be frozen with terror as opposed with Terry. Yeah, I'm okay. I just had a bit of a coughing fit. You see, this is the problem that I have. It's like it might look like 45 minutes or an hour of the finished product, but I normally spend a couple of hours doing them. So, like, the general rule of thumb is anything you record or any audiobooks you listen to, the narrator is likely to have spent 2 to 3 times longer actually recording the thing. But I'm very grateful for you guys being here and, you know, bearing with me while I kind of get through Right, let's see where we're at. Right, I'll go back a bit. Right. You mean? There we go. We'll go back to Larry acknowledging the remark. That'd be a good idea, wouldn't it? And for some reason, this room's getting warmer as well. Okay. Right. Rah, rah, rah. Larry acknowledged the remark with a tiny dip of his head. The rest of him was frozen with terror. It's all right, Larry. The worst that can happen is they'll ask you to sing. What's so terrible about... George caught sight of the seagull's face and decided that this was a topic best left alone. He folded his arms, looked straight in front of him, and set his lips in a slight smile. Lundqvist woke up. William Shakespeare was a great describer of sleep, referring to it as, inter alia, balm of hurt minds, knit her up with the ravelled sleeve of care, great nature's second course, and the season of all natures. Kurt Lundqvist, who had always taken the view that the pen may be mightier than the sword, but is still no match for a 12-gauge Remington Wingmaster with an 18-inch barrel loaded with 00 buckshot, preferred to think of sleep as a right bastard, particularly when induced by an outsized expanded polystyrene fish. Didn't help matters that the first thing he saw on opening his eyes was Lynx Jotapian, who said, "Are you all right, Mr. Lundqvist?" "Yes. Get this bloody thing off me and raise the alarm." "Straight away, Mr. Lundqvist." "Lynx?" "Yes, Mr. Lundqvist." "Try pushing it the other way." "Gosh, sorry, Mr. Lundqvist. I was thinking, did it hurt?" "Not nearly as much as what I'm going to do to you if you don't get a goddamn move on." "I'm doing the best I can, Mr. Lundqvist." "Yes," Lundqvist replied bitterly. "You probably are." A few minutes later, every alarm bell in the complex was howling its head off, producing a volume of noise so great that it was almost audible over the sound effects from the various rides. On the karaoke stall, however, it had about as much chance as a big disposable against Lundqvist's Remington. "Every time I say goodbye," Larry was singing, "I die a little." He didn't carry absolute conviction because, to judge strictly by appearances, he, well, was already dead. More than that, he'd been steeped for a week in formaldehyde and inexpertly stuffed. "He's really, really good, isn't he?" hissed the other seagull under his breath. "Mind you, he gets that from his mother." Larry carried on singing until the rat-headed fiend in nominal charge of the proceedings eventually took the microphone away from him and passed it on to a circular nun with light shining out through her ears. All right, so this was hell. But there are limits. The nun started to sing My Way. "Come on," George hissed. "Let's get out of this. I really do fancy something to eat." Before he could make good his escape, however, the rat-head snatched the mic away from the nun and jabbed it into George's hand. He smiled, as if receiving a bunch of flowers from a welcoming committee, took a deepish breath, and sang. It took the rat-head less than 7 seconds to realise that he had made a serious mistake, but by then the damage was mostly done. When he tried to take the mic away from Lucky George, all he got for his pains was an expertly placed elbow in his solar plexus. Therefore, thereafter, he confined his energies to switching the whole plant off at the mains and biting through the mic cable with his teeth. The difference it made was negligible. Finally, having assured the world at large that he'd done it his way, George handed back the mic and sighed contentedly. "Can I have another go, please?" The rat-head gave him a look of 3 parts pure terror, 2 parts unmitigated hatred. He shrugged. "Pity that," said George. "I was enjoying myself." He stepped down off the platform, weaving his way around the bodies of 6 or 7 fiends, all curled up like woodlice with their hands clamped firmly over their ears. "Philistines," he remarked. "Okay, Larry, Mike, last one of the bar gets them in." 3 minutes or so after he'd gone, an assistant fiend with the toes and claws of a lizard crawled down the nozzle of the giant bagpipe and collapsed at Rathead's feet. He'd nearly perforated his own eardrums by sticking his claws in his ears, but that was a small price to pay. "Stay me," he muttered. "That was bloody horrible, wasn't it, Chief?" "Pardon?" "I said that was probably horrible. Bloody horrible, wasn't it?" "Pardon?" "I said that was bloody horrible, Chief, wasn't it?" Rathead shook himself and shuddered. "You'll have to speak up," he said. Lynx Juttapian had found a helicopter. Now, we use the term loosely. What he had in fact found was a sort of walking tree with hideous branches like dry bones and a goat skull growing out of its left armpit. It had taken the eye of youthful enthusiasm to see that if you climbed up the thing's trunk and prodded it viciously with a penknife, it could be persuaded to whirl its branches fast enough to achieve a kind of a rotor effect. Sikorsky wouldn't have approved, but no matter. "Nothing as yet, Mr. Lundqvist. Over," he reported into his two-way radio. "Results so far are 100% negative." "Keep looking, Lynx. He's down there somewhere." "Roger and out." Lynx peered through a screen of small twigs and jabbed at the tree to go lower. "This is fun," Lynx said to himself. "Much more fun than school. I mean, compared to this, school sucks. I mean, this is, well, life." He brushed cinders out of his eyes and lifted his feet clear to avoid the pincers of a bored-looking anthropomorphic lobster positioned on the top of the horse's skull's swimming pool area. "Wah!" Not, said something inside him, that it's not also a tad scary. Like, it's a very long way down, and this tree could get cramp in its branches any minute, and falling a long way is bad enough at the best of times, without taking into account some of the really weird things a guy can land on in his place. "Quack! Quack! Get down more, you sucker!" Lynx yelled into the knothole, which he hoped was the tree's ear. "And when you start feeling tired, for Christ's sakes, rustle a leaf or something." The tree wobbled. Lynx looked up to see 2 seagulls roosting in the branches. They looked decidedly nauseous, as well they might. "Shoo!" Lynx yelled and waved his arms. "Go lay an egg or something." "Quack! You crazy dumb birds! You'll make this thing crash." "Quack!" Oh. His last thoughts, before he hit the frozen ice of the Bolton Lake and disappeared in a cloud of ice shards, spray, and matchwood, were, "Never mind, this is still better than school." His first thoughts after the fiends had fished him out and pumped half a gallon of stagnant Styx water out of his lungs were, on the other hand, there's a lot to be said for double geography. Narrator's note: no, there isn't. We had humanities at my school, and I mean, I love traveling the world. Being an army kid, it's in the blood. However, geography Geography. I love learning about cultures and places, but no, I'm not interested in the gross domestic product of various places. That should be in accountancy and maths, for example. And I remember writing out a story in Greek lettering, and realizing the error of my ways in trying to write English using Greek letters was going to take me a minute or two or a few weeks. That was one of the hardest projects I ever had to do, aside from making a hill using toilet rolls, construction paper, and cardboard. It's not easy. You know, when you do the gradient of a hill, and you have to make sure you had it exactly right. And of course, my old geography teacher managed to steal my UNICEF flag that I got from my father. Yeah, happy days. That was the second teacher that stole something from me in school. Anyway, I digress. Let's get back to the story. Oh my goodness. Oh, I love that. I like being frozen with Terry, and my singing has the same effect. Look at George, just nice. There you go. You see, it's a biological weapon or something. Right then, let's do this thing. And another thing, said Machiavelli. With a tremendous effort, the bar fiend in the Hell's a Pop Inn refreshment area ground his head round until he was facing his most regular customer. Sure thing, these were the torments of hell, and this was the spot reserved for married men who forsake their wives to go boozing every evening, and as a happily married fiend with a mortgage and 3 wonderful imps, he reckoned those drunken bums deserved everything they got, even this, but damn it, he was staff, not a customer, and he had to bear the brunt of it. All this acid rain, Machiavelli was saying, and all these volcanoes and stuff sodding up the weather. You aren't going to tell me that is all a coincidence now, are you? Anything you say, Nick, yawned the bar fiend. 'Cause, Machiavelli ground on, it's a matter of cold hard fact that on the day JFK was assassinated, the weather forecast for the whole of Texas was mainly dry. Some light cloud clearing early. But of course, that's what they wanted us all to think because the door opened. A man came in, sat down on a bar stool and said, "Hi, Nick, what you having?" And then Machiavelli went on. When you compare the records for seismic activity with the day of the Kennedy murder, with the night of the Watergate break-in, you'll find that exactly the same level of activity was recorded in Chicopee Falls, Iowa, on both occasions, which makes you think. He paused, as if trying to remember something he'd just heard, and then said, "Done it?" "Sure thing, Nick," said the bar fiend, polishing a glass. "It just wasn't fair," he said to himself. "All the inconsiderate husbands are out there in the back bar playing pool and getting pissed as rats, and I'm stuck in here listening to the floor show. They've got to do something about this." "Aye, Nick," the stranger repeated. Same again. Slowly Machiavelli turned his head and stared. "George?" he inquired. "Been a long time, Nick," replied Lucky George. "I was very interested in what you were saying just now, by the way. I expect you were discussing that new book by that journalist bloke, the one who got himself killed not so long back. Bunnet or something, I think he was called. What the hell are you doing here, George? I thought you'd—" "I have, Nick. I have. And Michelob and a toasted cheese sandwich for me," he called through to the bar fiend, "when you've got a moment. So," he said, turning back to Machiavelli, "how's things with you?" "Oh, all right," Machiavelli replied, flushing slightly. "They've made me a trustee now, actually." "Have they really?" George said. "Well, my goodness." "Yeah." Machiavelli looked down. I got this job as a saloon bar bore. And what's it like, Nick? Boring. Uh-huh. Anyway, I interrupted you. You were saying, was I? Yes, about Bonnet's book. Machiavelli cringed slightly. Oh, that. His theory is, he went on, without expression, eyes fixed on the floor, that the Martians have been behind all the major political cover-ups of the post-war era, which they have staged managed by clever manipulation of the climate. This also, Machiavelli concluded wretchedly, accounts for deforestation, defor, deforestation, acid rain, the greenhouse effect. I see. George scratched his ear. Enjoy your work, dear. Not a lot, no. George's beer and sandwich arrived, the latter slightly charred and served on the teens of a pitchfork. Narrator's note: is it teens or tines? Because I've always thought it was teens, but um, the bear said it was tines, and I know about like the fog and the time because it's all mine, all mine. If you know, you know. But is it teens or tines? I think teens sounds nicer. The teens of a fork, not the tines of a fork. Maybe it's my accent. Oh my goodness gracious. Right, okay. And he devoted his attention to them for a moment. And then he looked up. You know, he said with his mouth full. Funny, isn't it? The way things pan out. I mean, George said, think of what we were like back at school. Me, the quiet, studious one. You, the guy with the big ideas of everything you were going to do. Big career in politics. Get on the pundit circuit. Machiavelli made a noise, part agreement, part shame and part pain. Surreptitiously he bit a corner off George's sandwich. And yet here you are, George went on, stuck in this dead-end job. No pension to look forward to, Machiavelli interjected. No fringe benefits. No travel, no input to the fate of the unions. Bet you haven't had your own reserved parking space. The hours are bloody terrible, George. I bet they are, Nick. Machiavelli sobbed slightly. It's not just the hours, George, he snuffled. It's the hours and hours and hours of it that get to me, George. They would, George agreed. I wouldn't stand for it. Oh, I've got to stand, Machiavelli replied unhappily. Stools are all reserved for the customers. I've worn this damn brass rail paper thin, George. I could stick my finger through it any time I like. Yes, George blinked. What I meant was, I wouldn't put up with it. You wouldn't? Not if I were you, Nick. Not the Nick Machiavelli I used to know. By the way, see anything of Kurt Lundqvist today? Machiavelli shook his head. Last I heard, he said, he was in business assassinating redundant gods. Good line of work to be in, I should say. Yep. George nodded. Good, steady work. Must be interesting. Fascinating. Lucky little sod, said Machiavelli bitterly. When I think how he used to burst out blubbering every time we took his stiletto away from him. George sighed. And yet, he said, look at him and look at you. No, if I were you, Nick, I'd do something about it. Machiavelli looked up. There were the first ripe buds of tears sprouting at the edge of his bleared eyes. Like what? He said. George finished his sandwich and drained his glass. Well, he said, first off, I'd start a diversion. How are we doing? Yeah, I'd ask Google. Oh, Google is a legend. I like Google Maps as well. I have a little look-see all around the world and seeing if I can find where people have spotted the... Oh my goodness. Please excuse the yawn, not very much sleep. There is more to do, but I'm just taking a quick tea break. We need some tea. But yes. Have you ever done that thing? Please excuse the tea drinking there. Have you ever done that thing where you go onto Google and you type in sort of like, I don't know what the search is. I'm trying to think of it. It's where you sort of like type in the search and it's finding people that do the strangest things on Google, who are caught doing the strangest things on Google Maps. Some of them are quite macabre, to be honest. They are quite disturbing. Yes. Ah, right. Okie dokie. I forgot the voice. How much have we got left to do? We are cracking on. 26 minutes left in the chapter. Well, that's a good sign. If I please excuse me for taking so long to do this one. We only have 10 pages left, which is awesome. We're through the majority of it, which is fantastic. Whee! Getting somewhere. Oh my goodness gracious. It is a marathon. It is a marathon. Thank you for being here. I really, really do appreciate you very, very much. It does really help. And yes, we know the thing. And I might do a little treat at the end of my party piece, maybe. Which is a bit daft, but ew. Right. Whew, let's do this thing. Mr. Lundqvist? Hi, Lynx. He's not in here, Mr. Lundqvist. Lundqvist looked down into the pit. That's so, Lynx. I'm pretty sure of it, Mr. Lundqvist. You'd better come back up then. Pause. I've got a slight problem with that, Mr. Lundqvist. Lundqvist sighed. The term idiot, he decided, fitted Lynx Jotopian like the proverbial glove. I thought you might say that, Lynx, he replied. That's why I got this rope. Gee, Mr. Lundqvist. Lundqvist flipping Henry. That's a statement and a half. Oh, blah, 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 blah. Right, gotta run up for this one. Lundqvist unslung his rope and lowered it down into the pit. It was a very long rope, and when he'd peered it out completely and was just holding the end, he leant forward again and said, Got it? Not yet, exactly, boss. Geez, Lynx, how deep is this pit? I think, Lynx replied faintly, it's more sort of bottomless, like I'm in fact still falling. You are? I believe so, yes, Mr. Lundqvist. And, Mr. Lundqvist, there's all sorts of really weird things down here. Fine. Lundqvist stood for a moment, thinking. Lynx, he said, I want you to think basic physical and mathematical theory. I'm doing just that, Mr. Lundqvist. Okay, the universe is curved, right? If you say so, Skip. In which case, said Lundqvist, straightening his back and blowing the dust off his trouser knees, if you keep falling, then sooner or later you're going to end up exactly where you started. The trick at that point is to grab hold of something and haul yourself clear. Is that okay with you, Lynx? Save me having to clamber down with ropes and things. Anything you say, Chief. It may just take some time, you realize. I'm gay, Mr. Lundqvist. Thousands of years, maybe. No problem, Mr. Lundqvist. I can catch up on my written coursework while I'm down here. Good lad. Well, if you do get free in the next hour or so, I'll be around here somewhere. Okay, Mr. Lundqvist. Message received. Over and out. And, of course, in Link's case, down as well. We down? We gone, in fact. Lundqvist stood up, stretched his cramped muscles, and walked off in the direction of the refreshment area. You ready, Nick? Machiavelli nodded grimly. Since resolving to do this thing, he'd been bought several large brandies and a double measure of the native infernal liquor. evil spirit. Frickin' Henry. Ah, the native infernal liqueur evil spirit is what we're trying to do. Doopaloo. I'll have to just do that little bit again, because that's the way we do. Ma, 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 ma. Machiavelli nodded grimly. Since resolving to do this thing, he'd bought several. Try that again. He'd been bought. There we go. Since resolving to do this thing, he'd been bought several large brandies and a double measure of the native infernal liqueur, evil spirit. The result was that he was bloody, bold, resolute, and quite incapable of standing up on his own. Standing up was not, however, a prerequisite for what George had in mind. You got everything? I think so, George. In fact, it looks like I've got two of everything. Machiavelli burbled. Looks remarkably like. Actually, because. That's fine, Nick, said George firmly. That means you'll have a spare. Ready, you two? Two hovering seagulls dipped their wingtips in acknowledgement. Okay. Lundqvist straightened his back, blew into the loudspeaker a couple of times to check it was working, and took a deep breath. The fires of EuroBosch glinted off his mirror sunglasses, miraculously unbroken. Around him, 6 concentric circles of apprehensive fiends crouched slightly lower and wished they were somewhere else. Okay, George, Lundqvist amplified. I know you're in there. It goes without saying I have the area surrounded. Pause. No sound, except for the background screams, groans, and hisses of hot iron on perpetually renewed flesh. You could have heard a 20-foot molybdenum steel pin drop. George, Lundqvist boomed. It's time to call it a day. Come out with your hands. A figure appeared, silhouetted against the background flames, in the doorway of the refreshment area. Its hands were above its head. Lundqvist relaxed. My goodness gracious me, it's getting exciting. Hey. There we go. I promise I do know how to read. It's just sometimes it gets a bit complicated. Try that again. Lundqvist relaxed perceptibly until he was only as tense as a steel hawser at breaking point. Hi, the figure said. The fiends edged back slightly. Sure thing, they were fiends. Fiends are incapable of fear. It's just that there's no point in being bloody daft. That's all. Lundqvist jumped up. Come on, guys, he yelled. What are you waiting for? Grab the sucker. A fiend turned its bird's head and gave him a look. What? Us? It cheeped. Yes. Would you take us for bloody cocker spaniels? Lundqvist glanced round at the various shoulder ornaments around him. Some of you, he said. Yes, now get on with it. With a whimper, the fiends threw themselves forward and sprang at the outline in the doorway. Then, when they were within about 10 paces, the figure suddenly went whoosh and burst into flames. Screaming with frustrated rage, Lundqvist shoved his way through the throng of gibbering, terrified fiends and hurled himself at the Human Torch, who hit him quite hard in the stomach, winding him, and grinned. Hiya, Kurt, he said. Long time no see. Lundqvist rubbed the ash from his eyelashes out of his eyes and gurgled. Machiavelli, he howled. You're bad in hell for this. Machiavelli shrugged a pair of incandescent shoulders. You really think so? He said. We'll see. Meanwhile, Lucky George, who had spent the last 10 minutes breaking open all the disposable cigarette lighters from the display pack behind the bar and emptying them over Machiavelli's head, grinned and slipped quietly away down the fire escape. Every permanent structure in the complex, by the way, has to have a fire escape because of the building regulations. Where on earth the fire is supposed to escape to is anybody's guess. A quick dash across the frozen lake brought George out at the foot of the trio strength machine. A nice idea, this. You push hard against a huge lever shaped like a flute, which sends the marker on the dial of the machine up the calibrated scale. If you're strong enough, the marker hits a little bell, and assorted nightmarish fiends spring out of a trap door in the side of the machine and carry you off to everlasting torment. Serves you right for showing off. A seagull floated down from the top of the machine, came in on the glide, turned at a slight breeze, and dropped onto George's shoulder. "Thanks," George said. "With nothing," replied Mike through his badly singed beak. "Piece of stuff. One for the master's with." "Where is he now?" The seagull turned his head. "Oh, for them, I don't love his head thing," he replied. "One for idea, unpacking my granny's cat." "Fine," George said. Found the emergency. And swapping between voices is also quite difficult. NZ Awful Spirit. It's called Purple Death. Not a recommended drink if you expect it. Nice. I'll have to give it a try sometime. We like this. We'll go back to fine, I think it was. "Fine," George said. "It was nothing." "I'll try that again." "Fine," George said. There we go. Found the emergency exit yet? "Why are we still looking? As soon as he's found out, we'll let you know." "Good stuff," George replied. "I'll go over there and make myself inconspicuous for a bit. Ciao." "Yeah, boss." But George had gone, stepping quickly and silently across the scorched grass. The seagull shrugged. "Big enough and ugly enough to look after himself," he muttered, hopefully. Over there turned out to be the activity described in the brochure as the ultimate in paintball games. "That was good timing," remarked the round-bodied, owl-headed gate fiend as George strolled in, "just in time for the next detail. You get the stuff from that shed over there, and I tell you what to do." "Thanks," George replied. "You must remember this. A shed is but a shed. A hut is but a hut. The fundamental things apply as time goes by. True, it was apparently constructed out of a giant mother-of-pearl pumpkin with a hole smashed in the side for a doorway, but inside it was pure porta cabin." "What size?" demanded the attendant fiend. "Dunno," George replied. "You're the man with the experienced eye. You tell me." 67D, the fiend replied. "You can change over there." He handed George a plastic carrier bag, and George retired into a sort of sub-shed or cubicle where he opened the bag and inspected the contents. "Hey," he said, with admiration in his voice. "Now that's really something else." The bag contained a full-size replacement skin with fitted scalp and all matching bits. He hoped very much it was designed to be worn over one's existing skin. Oh, it was. Sticking in the small of the skin's back was a dagger driven in up to its hilt. There was no blade, fortuitously. George eased his way into the skin, settled his face as comfortably as possible into the mask, and stepped out of the cubicle. "Okay," said the attendant fiend. "The rest of the detail are waiting outside." "Just going." "Hey." "Yes." "Forgotten something?" "Have I?" "In the rack," said the fiend, pointing. "Take your pick. Limit of 3 per competitor." From the rack, George selected a 9-inch stiletto, a Venetian pattern cinqueda dagger, and a short Flemish falchion. Oh my goodness. Another thing is comparing and contrasting 3 different languages. Yeah. Right, we'll try that again. Much apologies. And a short Flemish falchion. Then he stepped outside. There were about 30 competitors, all dressed, to take them at face value, so to speak, in skins with knives stuck through them. Some of them were having a crafty last cigarette, others were fine-tuning their eyebrows, polishing their elbows, or just standing round tapping their feet. An eagle-headed fiend with talons for hands. Oh my goodness, excuse me. Ah, jumped up on me there. Please excuse if you hear my dog out. She's been a bit well, not feisty, because I have the window open downstairs. She can hear all the neighbour dogs rah-rahing because there's some very noisy neighbour dogs around the street, and she has to let them know what's what now and again. You know, rarely. She's a very quiet dog usually, but yeah, she's got the rah-rahs and the woo-woos now and again. So hopefully you won't hear it. Do. Did you hear her then? She went, oh, she knows I'm talking about it, that's why. Okie dokie. Tapping their feet, tapping their feet. There we go. I have found where I am. An eagle-headed fiend with talons for hands waved an umbrella in the air to attract their attention. Right, guys and girls, it said, just a few ground rules before we start. Now, we all want to have a good time, so the key thing to remember is don't get carried away, right? A few of the competitors nodded. The fiend continued. Now, it said, the objective is to stab as many of your fellow competitors repeatedly through the body and neck as you can within the allotted time without getting stabbed yourself. Now, for your comfort and convenience, we have to say no head wounds. The skins are perfectly safe under normal use, but in the past, we have had a few problems with direct hits on the temples and the eyes. That still leaves you a hell of a lot of body surface to be going on with, and I'm sure you'll all agree that safe's better than sorry. A slight susurration of background grumbling soon faded away, and the fiend continued. The only other thing we do insist on is, for obvious reasons, no disemboweling. Now, I realise that some of you here today will have perfectly genuine tribal, cultural, or religious disemboweling traditions, and of course, we respect that. So, all of you are equipped with our very realistic plastic giblets, which fit neatly into the concealed pocket in the front of your skin suits here. The fiend demonstrated, pulling a yard of polythene colon out of his stomach and folding it away neatly. And you realise? Hey, sorry, my Mickey Flanagan fiend is not going so well. You gotta go out. Yeah. We'll try again. Beep, 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 beep. And you release those by simply pulling on the little blue ripcord, which you'll find midway between the nipples on your skin suit. Right, that's it, basically. Go out and have a bloody good time. The fiend blew a whistle, jumped sideways, and curled up into a tight ball with his arms over his head. George hadn't been standing there for more than a 20th of a second when the man who'd been on his immediate left threw away a cigarette, brandished a stag's horn-hilted Provençal hunting sword, and jumped at him. George sidestepped, landed a kick on his assailant's behind as he sailed by and said, "Boo!" and then he ran for it. From the cover of an overturned table, in which a Florentine pattern broadsword and 2 richly inlaid baselards were baselards. Ah! Try that again. Action scene. Dun, dun, dun. Oh my goodness, we'll have to go back a little bit. I am so sorry. From the cover, it would be. Are you all doing all right? Are you doing okay? Here we go. From the cover of an overturned table in which a Florentine pattern broadsword and 2 richly inlaid baselards were already embedded, he watched the game with growing fascination. After the first heady slugfest, which eliminated the duffers and the majority of the corporate entertainment crowd, the pier slowed down dramatically and the element of skill came to the fore. Since there was sod all natural cover, concealment and stalking were confined to pretending to be a hideously mangled corpse until your prospective victim had turned his back. That explained, George realised the knife hilt already inserted in the suit. The trick, apparently, was simply to count the number of hilts projecting out of each potential body. 2 or more meant he was probably genuine. Once he'd got that far, approach with caution nevertheless, because a number of competitors, who'd clearly done this before, had taken the precaution of impaling themselves with one of their 3 permitted weapons before hitting the deck. Not, in George's opinion at least, strictly ethical, but presumably within the letter, if not the spirit of the rules. George was just bracing himself to step outside of his hide and have a go when a body crumpled down over the side of his table and landed heavily in his lap. As it fell, its face mark was pulled aside, and George recognised the features of his lawyer, Mr. Van Appin. "Hello, Pete," George said. "What are you doing here?" Mr. Van Appin grimaced. "I died," he said. George raised an eyebrow. "I thought you had a special arrangement," he said. "I did," Van Appin replied. "I had a watertight agreement. Trouble is, I drafted it myself." George restrained a snigger. "Bad move, that." "It was rather," the lawyer replied. "Still, a fee's a fee, and when your best client comes to you and asks you to do a job, you don't turn round and say, 'Sorry, conflict of interests. Try the guys down the road.' That's not the way successful practices are built up, George." "Suppose not." Mr. Van Appin shrugged. "It's not so bad, actually," he said. "I've still got my other offices in the other centuries, so I can continue to service my existing client base, more or less, while being in a position to extend my operation to this exciting new catchment area down here. I mean, if you can't get business down here..." Pete. George shook his head sadly. "I think you're in for a bit of a shock if you think that you're the only lawyer in these parts. I think you'll find there's rather a lot of them end up here." "All of them, in fact, sooner or later." Mr. Van Appin shrugged. "So, what?" he said. "A little competition never did anybody any harm. So long, George." "Ciao, Pete." Mr. Van Appin quivered and lay still, and George leant back against his table leg and watched for a few minutes. 2 competitors had run each other through with Spanish rapiers at exactly the same moment and were arguing heatedly about who had scored what. Yeah, yeah, oh my God. Please excuse me. There we go. There we go. I know who it is now. Okay. Excuse me." George felt a light tap on his shoulder. He whirled round, saw a figure with no clothes on looming over him with some sort of poleaxe, and lunged with the cinqueda. The blade went through smoothly and out of the other side. "I think you're supposed to fall over, or something," George said. "Actually," replied the man, "I'm just the linesman." "Oh." George grinned awkwardly. "Sorry about that." "No problem." The linesman, who had just been transferred at his own request from the Special Engineers Corps after a long and distinguished term of captain. Try that again. Oh my goodness. See, when it gets to the end and it's been a very long recording session, it's already 1 hour and 11 minutes of this chapter. My goodness. Oh, we're nearly there. We're nearly there. Thank you for bearing with me throughout this. I'm going to have a drink of water because my throat is beginning to fail me. Okay. There we go. We know where we're at. Do, 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 do. Who had just been transferred at his own request from the Spectral Engineers Corps after a long and distinguished term of service as a captain of spectral warriors, shrugged and died. It happens to me all the time, he said posthumously. Was there something? George asked. I just wondered, said the linesman. Are you Lucky George Faust by any chance? George nodded. Who wants to know? It's just that Kurt Lundquist headed his way with a posse of heavily charged fiends, the linesman replied. For reasons of my own, which I won't bore you with, I don't fancy being around when he gets here. In fact, the linesman added, things have worked out pretty damn near perfect, you killing me like that. I mean, stands to reason, even that vindictive little sod can't kill me if I'm dead already. It was nothing. The linesman smiled, reached in his pocket, and produced 2 credit cards, which he laid on his eyelids. It's cheaper this way if you're a regular customer, he explained. Good luck. Thanks. George looked up and saw a seagull hovering overhead. It occurred to him that Larry wouldn't be able to recognize him in his skin suit, so he stripped it off and dumped it. Hey, said a competitor who'd been stalking George for 7 minutes with a 2-foot ballock knife. That's cheating. Nuts, George replied, and swatted him over the head with a chair. He collapsed on the ground, muttering. The seagull perched on the edge of the table and ruffled its wing feathers with its beak. Sodding awful place for flying this, Larry remarked with his mouth full. Thermals in all the wrong places because of all the fires. Found it yet? The emergency exit. The seagull nodded its beak. Follow me. Ta-da! Oh my goodness. That was indeed a marathon chapter, and if you have got this far with me, thank you very, very much. I do appreciate it. And as ever, if you could hit the like button if you enjoyed it, the notifications bell if you want to be notified, and share and subscribe if you want to. It all keeps the lights on, the hamsters happy and twiddling. Do you know that capybaras and guinea pigs whistle? I wonder if hamsters have a little sort of sound they make in their own minds. You know the things that get paper clips out of, that get staples out of paper? You know, like ngang ngang, the kind of little kind of like handheld devices. That to me is basically what a hamster is. One of those staple removers just with a lot of fluffy fur on it. Yeah. So this has been an incredibly long one, and hello to everybody. Yes, I'm absolutely shattered. I'm gonna keep it going because I have got the live going at the same time, and I'm gonna just do the close off for both of them, as it were. I thank you very much for you all for being here. Thank you for the nice comments and the interactions and the conversations and all that sort of stuff. And yeah, thank you for the niceness. I was going to do a little party trick for you, but I think it might have to wait for another day because I'm really not prepared for it. Well, I am. I do have a party trick where I can do lots of voices in one song. But as I said, I think I'm going to save that. And for now, I'm going to say take it easy, take care, look after yourselves, have lots of good sleep, because I can tell you something after this chapter and after producing it, which I'll do later on, I sure as heckers will have a good sleep myself. So, thank you all for being here. I very much appreciate you. Take it easy, sleep well, and I'm signing off. Oh my goodness, Tony Wood is still alive. Thank you so much for everything. I do very much appreciate you, but I am absolutely puggered. No, do you know something, D Crystal? I literally, the amount of times I actually had to grip my nose to stop myself sneezing, I can't even tell you. And then the big coughing fit, I had to silence it. Yeah, there was a little sneeze there, and I'm really sorry. Night from New Zealand. Thank you so much for being here, Ross. Thank you, D Crystal, for being here. Bunya, thank you as well. Thank you to everybody, to Jeannie, to JDE Tattoo. Just thank you for making this a huge success. I appreciate you all. Stay lovely to you, Mr. Grittle, and take it easy.